Hello, keyboard friends. I'm back. It's me, the Simon. Uh, Welcome to my video about cherry picking MX style switches. I apologize, I've been missing for a while, though many of you know exactly why that's been the case. But before we get into it, let's just talk about what is cherry picking. So, got some switches here. Now, let's say I want to put together a really nice build, and we actually do want to put together a really nice build. I've got it right behind me. I want to get myself the best switches I can possibly get out of that bag. Now, why cherry pick? I mean, it's not for everyone. Lubing is generally enough, as is a good factory lubed switch. I would keep it for more special projects. And, the goal is to go for maximum smoothness. In this case, I'm doing linear switches. A lot of the things that we'll discuss will also work for tactile switches and clicky switches. The third reason to cherry pick is to remove the majorly problematic switches. So basically just test all the switches beforehand. If one, has a leaf that feels weird or sounds weird, or, a spring that's crunchy, or, maybe it doesn't fit together properly. Anyway, we're going to discuss what all those things mean. So let's roll the intro. All right. So I've got myself a lovely, lovely keyboard that I do intend to build. And I intend to build it with pretty good switches. Now, I like to cherry pick relatively affordable switches, like, like Milky Top Gats, maybe MX Blacks if I get them at a good price, something like that. And I want to make sure that, I'm going to get the best possible experience. I will save it for more involved builds or when I have a large quantity of cheap switches. Now, this is like a third of my GAT X that I have, but let's get into it. I think that's enough to start out. Could be any amount. Generally, when I cherry pick, the general rule of thumb is if you need like 100 switches, buy 150, maybe buy 200 if you know it's a switch with a lot of variance and a lot of problems. Now, I am going to be cherry picking all of these. I'll be fast forwarding through the bits that need to be fast forwarded through. I will tell you how long it took for however many switches there are. This looks to be maybe like 130 switches, if I'm not mistaken. But once you get rolling, it's simple enough. All right. Step one, you want to take it slow and easy. Okay. Don't force yourself. Fatigue is a thing. If you're just trying to feel switches in the same way that flavor fatigue, if you're, just eating the same food for like a huge portion, at one point you're going to get tired. If you're tired, walk away, leave it, come back with fresh fingers and a fresh nose and fresh ears. Now, generally, I recommend to have a known good switch. Now, if you're watching a video on how to cherry pick switches, you probably don't have a good known switch. So we're actually going to do that as well. So generally what I like to do is separate the switches into, let's say, 4 categories. We'll have category 1, which is really good, category 2, which is good, category 3, which is meh, and then category 4 is reserved for switches where there is a major problem. Now, let's set up a grading system. There we go. We've got our grading system. Now, I don't necessarily have a good switch, so where do I start? All of cherry picking is a comparative analysis. So you don't need to have tried the smoothest switch in the world. You are simply comparing switches to other switches. So first things first, I'm going to grab, let's say, a handful of switches, and let's see if I can notice any difference. So press them both at the same time. What I'm feeling for is not necessarily a weight difference, because if you're cherry picking, you're going to be spring swapping anyways. You do want to be on the lookout for if you get a problematic spring. So like a spring that sounds crunchy or something like that. Now, Big Brain Simon has planned ahead, and I've got my sound test microphones right here. So if we find one of those switches, I'm going to let you guys hear it up close so you have an idea of what to listen out for. But for now, okay, this one feels smoother. We confirm by swapping hands. This one is indeed significantly smoother. So boom, boom. For now, I'm not using these. I'm just trying to separate them into from good to bad. Grab two other switches. Now I'm using my memory here to try and compare to that switch. If at any point my memory doesn't work anymore, I grab the original switch. This is, for all intents and purposes, my known good switch. Yep, that is still a better switch than this one. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, okay, we've got a new leader. This one is smoother than this one. Now, it might take you a while to try and figure out what's smoother than what. You can kind of wing it, you know. This is done in multiple phases, you know. Just because I think that this is way smoother than this one, I'm going to come back later and double check that, you know, because sometimes things will just feel smoother than they actually are, or feel scratchier than they actually are. There's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of weird stuff that goes into your perception of switch smoothness, so don't worry about it. Let's just keep it simple. I'm going to grab two random switches again. Okay, I feel this one is way smoother than this one, so as a matter of fact, this one is the first that actually feels scratchy. So you're going all the way over there. And this one feels pretty smooth. It's not as smooth as my known good switch. Okay, it's about on par with this switch. Automatically, like, we've started categorizing these. Let's check these out. Ooh, that one feels real smooth. Let's double check. We swap hands. That is pretty smooth. Okay, this is kind of decent. Let's compare. So I'm now pressing very slowly. So I'm trying to see if the difference in smoothness has something to do with the spring or has something to do with the leaf. So generally, if you just press it fast, you get an idea of, okay, more or less it's X amount of smooth units. We'll call it 6.9 smooth units. But as I'm pressing slower, I'm trying to get a feel for, okay, once that stem has actually contacted the leaf, is one smoother than the other? And yes, this one is smoother. Okay, let's do the last two, and then consider this our like, you know, our benchmark good switch. This is very smooth. This is very smooth. Wow. Interesting. All right, at this point, where we've pretty much found our known good switch, I'd like to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, your ears. So let's have ourselves a listen. Now, remember that this is only to be done comparatively with switches that are the same type as other switches. MX Blacks, for example, are going to sound very, very scratchy compared to Gaterons, for example. And that doesn't mean that they are more scratchy. They just tend to make more noise as a switch. So I'm simply comparing one switch to the other. And what we're going to do is I'm going to let you hear this out. So already I've decided which one is smoother. So they feel pretty much exactly as smooth, but one sounds a little bit smoother. So a little bit less noise. And I'm going to do this and turn on those microphones for you. Alrighty. All right. We've all agreed this is the smoother switch. You may not have seen how I may have juggled it, but this was the smooth switch to begin with. So this goes into or on top of the eggplant. This is our known good switch. All right, I'm just gonna run through all of these. If I come into any problematic switches, I'll let you know. So those will be switches that sound very scratchy, switches that have leaf noise, so a high-pitched metallic like crunching, not necessarily crunching, but like leaf ping. I'll also be on the lookout for if anything has like a really bad stock spring where it's crunching or you can like hear it moving around. I'll let you hear that as well. I don't know if I'm going to find any because GADAXs have been pretty good overall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially speed run through categorizing these. I'm going to separate these a little bit more just to make space. Okay. I know you guys can't see the eggplant, but the eggplant is there, I promise. So let's get into it. This is probably going to be fast forwarded. So I'll see you there. Also, one last thing that if we find it, I'll let you know, and that would be a like a high pitch return sound. So like when I let go of it and it comes back, it sounds different than other switches. I guess that's it. Also, you know, scratchiness, leaf issues, but we'll get to those when it's time. All right, let's go. Throughout this, I will be referencing my known good switch every once in a while. I don't need to always keep it in my hand. Like once I've got a feeling for where something should be, I don't need this. But once in a while, you'll see me reach for it again, just as a refresher, just to remind myself how smooth is the good smooth switch. All right. What just happened is I have now found a better candidate for basically the smoothest switch of the bunch. Just by complete accident, we've got ourselves a brand new switch. So this is now our eggplant. So as we go through it, we will continue doing this. If I find a switch that, okay, this is absolutely a good switch, fine. Eventually it'll get to a point where you'll find a lot of switches that are as good as your main switch. That's fine. At that point, you don't really have to upgrade it anymore. But like in early stages, let's say in your first 20 switches, if you find something smoother than your known good switch, just upgrade it. That's now your known good switch. One other thing to keep an eye out for is you need to be wary of, especially with stock springs, you need to be wary of uh, spring weight differences. So, for example, this spring is lighter than this spring by a teensy bit, and you may not feel it while starting out, but you might, because this is all comparative, anyways. Try to get past the fact that one spring is heavier than the other. One way I like to do that is by pressing them quickly with both hands at the same time and kind of just seeing how smooth they go down. Because if I press them slowly, this one goes down a little bit easier than this one, and my brain automatically thinks that, you know, this particular one with a lighter spring is actually smoother. So when I struggle with something like that, I will default to pressing them both down quickly, like all at once. And it turns out, yeah, the one with the lighter spring did turn out to be smoother, but I'm going to sanity check it. We swap hands. Okay. And finally, we use the ears. When we use the ears, we try and press down as slowly as possible on both switches at the same time. And in fact, yep, this is smooth, this is not, at least comparatively. All right, we found something special. So I've got myself a switch that would actually go into the sussy column. So with this one, I can hear the leaf significantly more than I should hear the leaf. So I'm going to keep this smart. The one with the leaf issue will always be left, and the known good switch will always be right, and try to hear the difference between the two. All right. Give you guys a little sound test. So, reminder, bad, good. All right. Now, I don't know how well that's going to come across over the microphones, over the internet, over all of that. So, if you end up with a switch that sounds questionable to you, that's fine. Just put it aside. Put it aside and keep going. So, like, something sounds kind of off. I don't know if it's the leaf, it could be the spring, but anyway, anything put into this pile will be dealt with. This isn't going in the garbage, because if it's the spring, that's an easy fix. I can swap the top, I can swap the bottom, I can take, a stem from something else, put it in there, and at least make one good switch. Anyway, let's continue. All right, so you'll see that sometimes I'll have two switches in both hands. I'll do the little swapperino to just try and rule out, left versus right hand bias. And you'll see that sometimes I'll struggle with one switch and I'll know exactly where to put another. So I know that this is in the good category, but I still can't tell with this one. So I need another comparative switch. And I keep swapping. So sometimes you'll see me go through like 2-3 switches on one hand while I'm still thinking about one. Take your time. Remember, that is the first step. Take your time. Alternatively, you can just do one switch at a time. Press it with your right hand, press it with your left hand. What I'm doing is a more advanced technique because I've been cherry picking for a long time, and I can do this relatively quick. Remember that once this is said and done, and we've organized everything, there are still more steps. There are sanity checks. So don't worry about it now. You're just trying to roughly get them into their categories. Okay, we've got one with a spring problem, I believe. It sounds like this has a spring problem. I'm going to let you guys hear it. Again, right now it doesn't matter what the problems are. Anything that sounds weird is something you should just put to the side. So again, I'm going to give you a sound test. The problematic one is the left one. The known good switch is the right one. Hopefully the microphones are working as intended. All right. I really hope that that came across, but to me, this sounds like a spring issue. Maybe like a spring is misaligned or maybe like a little bent or something. Doesn't matter. Goes over there. We'll worry about it in a bit. Let's keep going. There we have it. We have now sorted these into 4 effective categories. Very smooth, smooth, meh, bad. So now we've got the sanity check phase. We repeat this as many times as needed. This is a good opportunity to take a break. Once you've got everything sorted, go get some coffee, do something. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go get some coffee. All right. We are back with fresh fingers, freshly brewed coffee. Yeah, I put a little bit of milk in it. It's okay. Thank you, James, for the wonderful coffee. Alrighty, it's sanity check phase. What do we do during the sanity check phase? Make sure the good switches feel good. Make sure the okay switches feel okay. Well, let's do that real quick. So sanity check. We've got our known good switch. We check that because we just got up and we came back. We may not remember what it felt like. All right. So I'm going to take all these switches down here. Anything that I agree is still very smooth goes back up there. Anything that's a slight disagreement might stay down here. So let's run through it. All right, we have completed our pile of extremely good switches. Now, we'll talk about what we're going to do with them after. Let me do my okay switches. So what I'll do is anything that feels better than okay will actually get upgraded. Anything that feels less than okay is just going to go here. So let's go for it. So you might see me upgrading a lot of switches. Prior to upgrade, I like to just hear them out because it's possible that I've put them in the good instead of the great pile because they are smooth, but maybe they're a little bit louder than the other switches. It's good to just categorize those because once you've got it in a keyboard, if you've got one switch that's just louder than the others, it's going to throw everything off. But a lot of these I'm noticing are okay. These are smooth enough to be put into the good category or the great category, pardon. And there's nothing wrong with that. Let's finish. All right, we got our great, we got our good. Let's check our meh just to make sure. Yeah, a little bit of a weird sound on this one. I'm not even gonna fast forward through this bit. Yeah, also sounds a little weird. Yeah, a little scratchier sounding than these. Uh, in smoothness, this is pretty much a good switch, but eh, it's not hurting anybody by putting it over there. This one is fine. That one is kind of weird sounding. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so only one got upgraded from there, and let's check out our Mega Sus switches. You know, when you feel it, it's not so bad, but you can hear that spring. Oh yeah, this one you can hear a lot of spring, and this one you can hear the leaf. All right, so we've got our categories: great switches, good switches, meh switches, bad switches. So what's the plan? Well, generally switches like these will go into your alphas, assuming you don't have enough to do a full build with just like these switches. When the video is done, I'm going to make sure that I have enough great switches for the board that I'm actually going to work on. These will get segregated, so stay organized. Get yourself a little baggie, and you give these an A plus or whatever grade you want to give them. So these are confirmed A plus switches. Toss them in here. Now the sanity check phase, if you're less experienced, don't just do it once. You know, go through it, go off, take another break, come back, do it again. You know, if you're not super confident, spending more and more time with the comparative analysis is going to help you, not hurt you. Just as long as you take routine breaks, you take it slow, go away, come back, give it a try. But I pretty much trust these to all be solid. If I had to tell you how many switches are in here, this looks round about 70. Actually, let's give them a quick count, real quick. So I like to use the three switch method. So 3, 6, 9, 10, 3, 6, 9, 20, 3, 6, 30, 3, 6, 9, 40, 3, 6, 9, 50, 3, 6, 9, 60, 3, 6, 9, 70. It's exactly 70 switches. So realistically, we need about 14 more for a wing keyless 10 keyless. And realistically, I can take my good switches and use those for, let's say, my navigation or my F-row. You know, things that I'm not going to touch as often, that I'm not going to be so concerned about smoothness. In any case, if you're cherry picking, you also want to be lubing, you also want to be spring swapping. So in the end, they might end up all being perfect, just from the good to the great. But in my case, I'm just going to make sure that I have enough greats to actually do my Aru TKL. All right. So those are the A+. Let's grab another bag. There we go. These are A-. These would be like C's, and these would be F's. So like absolute failures would go here. Things that, you know, sound a little bit different or whatnot, these can be put into a macro pad, you know, a meme build, something like that. Don't waste your switches, okay? Because the next step is the recycle phase. So first things first, let's try and figure out what's wrong with all these switches. We'll start with these three, because these three have major issues. So this one just sounds like the spring is in there weird. So let's zoom in a little bit. Let's focus. Oh boy, good job, camera. Great focus. All right, I'm gonna open this up and just have a look inside. I'll take the spring and just flip it. This is the easiest thing to do, in which like you don't need additional tools or whatever. You can just do it. All you need is a switch opener. All right, so I'll flip the spring. I can still hear the leaf. So and here, I'll give you a little sound test for the leaf that I hear. So for this one, I know it's not the top. I pretty much know it's not the stem. So what I can do, so I can take this top. So generally a bad top is very rare. A bad top is during your switch testing, when you let go and it comes back up, it just sounds completely different than the other switches. That would be considered a bad top. It's super, super, super rare. But this is a known good top. And the stem, I can just eyeball it, just make sure, the legs aren't broken or something like that. They're not, they're fine. So I just know that this is a bad bottom. And I'm going to throw the spring away with the bottom because it's a stock spring anyway. So this goes in the bin. But we have saved the stem and we have saved the top. Let's go through the other three. Yeah, this one sounds weird again. I'm going to open it up. Flip the spring, just in case. Sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference between a spring problem and a leaf problem. Best thing to do is literally just like grab another spring and put it in there. But I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. If you have more springs, absolutely try a spring that you know is okay. So flip the spring. Still sounds pretty much exactly like the other one, so I know it's a leaf issue. It happens, it's rare, 1 out of 150, and this is still a perfectly usable switch. It's just not a switch I'd want in my keyboard. Alternatively, what you can do instead of just throwing these away, because don't throw away plastic, reuse as much as you can. Realistically, you can use these bottoms for something something memey, a little meme build, maybe a little Franken switch, put a razor green stem in there or something. It is what it is. All right, and we've got our final naughty boy. Yeah, that just sounds like the whole switch is terrible. I'm just doing a quick visual inspection, just making sure like nothing's broken. The leaf isn't broken, the stem isn't like missing a leg or something. And from what I can tell, it's not the spring, but just as a sanity check, like sometimes you can't really trust 100%. So I've got a very known good spring that is lubed, and now my desk bat is lubed. I promise you, I'm a professional. All right, let's put this back together. If this sounds way better, then okay, we knew it was the spring. If it still sounds really sussy, then it's the leaf. It still sounds very sussy. It is the leaf. So once again, I'll give you, I'll give you an example of bad leaf sound. This will be the final of the three. Not every bad leaf is going to sound the same. Generally, you don't need to know what a bad leaf sounds like because this is all comparative. You're just comparing one thing to the other. And if one sounds wildly different than the other 100, just put it aside. Just don't deal with it. Again, I have no idea if all this is gonna like actually like go through the microphones properly. So I hope it does. Like I hope it's, I mean, I've got the most accurate like sound testing environment I could possibly have. So let's not throw away this good spring. At least we know that this is a good spring. These are some TX 57 gram mediums, which have a tolerance of less than a gram, which are fantastic, fantastic, well-priced springs that you should absolutely use. Okay, so we've got some useful tops, we've got some useful stems. We hold on to those, all right? And then we've got our meh pile. Our meh pile realistically can still be lubed, spring swapped, and put it on your nav, put it on something like where the smoothness isn't really gonna matter. If you have a single, like, I don't know, if you've got a little macro pad or something, slap it on there. If you're building a full size, put it like on the part of the num row that you never touch. These aren't gone. The only ones that are gone are ones where, you actually have severe problems. Now, all things considered, from about 70 and 40, and then we've only had 3 actually bad switches out of about 130, 140 switches. And, that's just me being a little bit more aggressive than others. It's up to you to decide what's okay to put in your keyboard and what's not. Don't worry about it. Generally, though, recycle if you can. If you've got, a whole bunch of like meh switches or big sussy switches, give them to someone. Give them to a noob. Just be like, these aren't the greatest switches, but here you go. They're free. And you can't go wrong with that. All right. So that should be, let me just check my notes. This should be pretty good. This entire process took me about 35, 40 minutes to go through 140, 150-ish switches, or 130. I didn't count them, but that includes, taking a break, getting some coffee. Remember, take it easy. It's like switch lubing. You got to take it little by little. Anyway, if you have any more questions, you could drop them down in the comments. If I didn't explain something well enough, hopefully I can explain it there. If you like my educational videos, leave a like so I can make more educational videos. And if you want to become a keyboard friend, there's a Patreon in the description. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys soon for another video about stuff that is keyboard related.